Millionaire CEO took his twins on a blind date. Acted broke, but her reaction left him stunned. It was Friday night in a worn-out diner on the edge of a small Tennessee town. The rain outside drummed steady against the windows, fogging the glass in soft swirls. The booths were old but clean, bathed in the warm hum of neon lights. Inside, a man in a faded Carhartt jacket sat across from a woman he'd never met before, and beside him, nestled into the booth, were two sleepy-eyed 6-year-olds. His name was James Walker, 42, CEO of a multi-million-dollar logistics firm just 2 towns over. But tonight, no one knew that. Not the waitress refilling his kids' chocolate milk. Not the hostess who'd raised her eyebrow when he walked in with twin girls to a blind date. And certainly not the woman across the table, Emily, who hadn't even blinked when she saw the scuffed work boots, the duct tape patch on his jacket, or the coupons he pulled from his wallet like they were gospel. He watched her now, quietly. She was laughing with his daughters. Not politely, genuinely. Her eyes softened when one of them leaned in to whisper something. She didn't flinch when the younger one knocked over a water glass. She simply smiled, grabbed a handful of napkins, and said, "Accidents happen." James sat still, studying her like he was seeing something he'd forgotten existed. She didn't know his name was worth more than the diner they were sitting in, but she did know how to look a little girl in the eye and make her feel safe. And somehow, that mattered more. Some truths can only be uncovered when the mask comes off. Stay with us. This story is about love, trust, and the quiet power of showing up exactly as you are. And before we dive into this story, if you want to hear more stories like this, please like the video and hit that subscribe button. James leaned back just slightly, watching Emily carefully, like she was a page in a book. He didn't want to turn too fast. The twins were huddled close to her now, their hands sticky with syrup from a shared plate of pancakes. The older one, Gracie, was braiding Emily's fingers with her own. Lily, quieter, leaned her head against Emily's arm, like it was something she did every day. And Emily let her. James hadn't expected that. "You're girls," she said softly, her eyes flicking to him across the table. "There's something special." He nodded, cautious. "They're the reason I wake up in the morning." There was a pause. It wasn't awkward, just full, like silence that meant something. Emily didn't pry. She just smiled in that quiet way she had, like she already understood the things he wasn't saying. And for a second, James thought, maybe this won't crash and burn after all. But then the bell above the diner door jingled, and James' stomach dropped. Striding in like he owned the place was Cole Bennett, 6'3", tailored suit, under a designer raincoat, Rolex catching the light. Cole was the CFO of Walker Freight, and James's oldest friend turned corporate shadow. Where James kept his empire quiet, Cole made noise. Where James dressed down, Cole flaunted wealth like cologne. And worst of all, Cole had opinions, especially when it came to James' private life. Cole's eyes scanned the diner lazily, then locked on James in the booth. And before James could redirect his gaze or offer a polite excuse to Emily, Cole was already at their table. "Walker," Cole said, the smirk blooming before he even spoke. "Didn't expect to find you here." He looked from James to Emily to the twins. His tone wasn't rude, but it carried something worse, judgment disguised as charm. James offered a tight smile. "Just dinner." Cole cocked his head, leaning against the booth. "With company, I see." Emily straightened in her seat, something subtle shifting in her shoulders. She wasn't intimidated, just alert now, like she sensed a storm on the way. "Emily, this is Cole Bennett," James said. "Business associate." "Hi," she said, warm but firm. "Nice to meet you." Cole gave a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "Likewise. And who are these lovely ladies?" "Gracie," one of the twins said, unbothered. "And she's Lily." Cole crouched slightly to eye level, giving them a salesman's grin. "Well, aren't you two lucky to have a dad like this guy? But he's never told you how important he really is." James interjected quickly, voice low. "They don't need to know that, Cole." But it was too late. The curiosity had flickered across Emily's face. Just a flash, a tilt of the head, a tightening around her eyes, but James caught it. The calculation. The question. And it hit him harder than he expected. Cole rose, clapping James on the back. Anyway, I'll catch you Monday. Board. Meetings moved up. They're expecting an answer on the expansion deal. Then, to Emily. Enjoy your evening. And just like that, he was gone. James stared at his coffee. The silence that followed was colder this time. Not full. Fragile. Emily looked at him, gently now. So, you're not exactly patching drywall for a living. James didn't look up. No. Why pretend? He hesitated. Not because he didn't know the answer, but because the truth felt embarrassing. Too raw. I've had women smile for the wrong reasons, he said finally. I've watched people shift. The second they hear my last name. My kids, they don't need more confusion. And I don't need more walls. She didn't speak right away, but her eyes didn't leave him either. And then, softly, I get that. He looked up. She shrugged, voice quieter now. My ex was all flash. Big gestures, big promises. But when my mom got sick and I was drowning in bills, he vanished. Turns out money's easy. Presence is rare. Something in James eased. Not all the way, but enough to breathe. Outside, the rain had slowed to a mist. Inside, the diner was quieter now. Only a few late-night stragglers and a humming neon buzz above the jukebox. Gracie had dozed off. Lily was fighting sleep, her cheek still resting on Emily's arm. James shifted forward. You didn't flinch when you found out I lied. Emily shook her head. You didn't lie. You waited. Big difference. Their eyes met. This time longer. He reached for the napkin holder absently, not to break the moment, but because his hands needed something to do. You didn't ask for anything. Not once. Emily gave a small smile. Wasn't here to take. I showed up to meet someone real. And that did something to him. Quietly. Profoundly. He hadn't realized how long it had been since someone looked at him without expectation. Just then, Lily shifted, waking slightly, and James instinctively placed a hand on her back. Steady. Protective. Emily watched that, and without a word, adjusted her arm to support the girl's head. Again, James whispered, You good? Emily nodded. I'm good. Then she added, voice low, Are you? He didn't answer. Not with words, but the way he looked at her, tired, relieved, and maybe, just maybe, hopeful, was enough. James stepped out of the diner into the misty night, one arm cradling Lily against his chest, the other holding the door for Emily and Gracie. The air was soft and heavy, and the scent of rain on asphalt lingered like a memory. Emily turned to him, her voice hushed. Want me to help with their car seats? James paused. She hadn't asked how many cars he owned, or what kind, or why he didn't have a driver or a nanny or someone else to do all this for him. She just asked if he needed help. Yeah, he said quietly. Thank you. The parking lot was nearly empty. His truck sat in the far corner, not the black Escalade he drove to boardrooms or galas, but the dusty old Ford he'd kept since college. He opened the back door gently, laying Lily into her seat with practiced tenderness. Gracie was already drifting off in Emily's arms, her small fingers still wrapped around the corner of a napkin she'd taken from the diner. James glanced over, and something about the sight of them hit him harder than anything Cole had said. A woman, calm and sure, not afraid of messy hands or spilled juice, holding a child that wasn't hers like it mattered. And she didn't flinch. He walked over, opened the other door, and nodded. Emily eased Gracie into the seat, brushing the girl's hair back before buckling her in. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that hummed with something unspoken. James leaned against the open door, watching Emily tuck the seatbelt carefully. I wasn't planning on staying for dinner, he said finally. I almost backed out when the sitter canceled. Thought I'd just text and reschedule. Emily glanced at him. Why didn't you? James hesitated, then shrugged. Because something told me, if you were the kind of person who'd show up despite everything, you'd understand why I had to bring them. A soft smile flickered at the corners of her mouth. I'm glad you did. He looked at her, really looked, past the warm expression, the calm presence. There was a steadiness in her, and he felt it, the pull of something deeper, quieter than attraction, respect, that rare, sacred thing. Emily leaned back, crossing her arms gently. Can I ask you something? James nodded. Why not just tell people the truth? Who you are, what you do. There was no judgment in her voice, just curiosity, and maybe concern. James rubbed the back of his neck, gaze drifting to the edge of the lot. Because the truth's complicated. I built something after my wife died. Not just a company, a shield. Around me, around the girls. It protected us from pity, from the people who only see dollar signs. But lately, he trailed off, then met her eyes again. Lately, it started feeling more like a wall than a shield. And I didn't realize how high it had gotten until tonight. Emily held his gaze. And then, with a voice as soft as the mist falling around them, then maybe tonight's the start of climbing over it. James didn't speak. He didn't need to. He just stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. It wasn't a grand moment. No sweeping music. No dramatic confession. Just the sound of the rain starting again, tapping gently on the truck roof and the space between them growing smaller. Then, without thinking, he reached out, brushing a damp strand of hair behind her ear. His fingertips lingered just long enough to mean something. And she didn't look away. A long silence stretched between them, rich and thick with all the things they hadn't said. Then, Emily broke it, softly, almost like a promise. You don't have to hide around me. The words landed like warmth in his chest. He hadn't realized how cold he'd been. He nodded, almost to himself. Then maybe I'll stop. Behind them, Lily stirred, murmuring in her sleep. Emily looked over, then turned back to him with a hint of something playful in her expression. You know, for a guy who claims he doesn't trust easily, you sure let your daughters nap in a stranger's arms. James smiled, the kind that reached all the way into his eyes. They trust you. That's enough for me. And for a moment, there was nothing left to prove. No boardroom masks. No billionaire facades. Just two people, standing in the rain beside an old truck, grounded by truth, and softened by the kind of connection that doesn't need to be rushed. Cole waited by his BMW, arms crossed, eyes flicking toward the diner like he was reconsidering the last 10 years of his life. James approached without urgency, the rain a steady curtain between them. He carried the weight of the moment with the same calm he wore into board meetings, except this time, there was no suit, no title, just a man in a damp jacket and work boots, looking his old friend straight in the eye. Needed something? James asked, his voice quiet but solid. Cole hesitated. He glanced past James toward the truck where Emily was now checking the twins' blankets. She hadn't seen him yet. That mattered. Cole let out a breath, rubbing his temple. I didn't mean to embarrass you back there. You didn't, James replied. You embarrassed yourself. The words weren't cruel, just honest. And that hit harder than any raised voice could have. Cole nodded slowly. Yeah, I figured. He shifted, hands on his hips now. I guess I've just been watching you slip further away, hiding out, turning down invites, canceling lunches. I thought maybe you were, I don't know, losing your edge. James didn't flinch. Turns out, there are things more important than an edge. Silence. Then Cole asked, quieter, she know who you really are now? She knows enough, James said. And she stayed. Cole looked toward the truck again, watching Emily gently adjust Lily's tiny sock where it had slipped from her foot. That's rare, he murmured. James nodded. Cole's voice dropped. She real? Yeah, James said. She's real. Another pause. This one lingered. The rain softened around them, a quiet hush. Between two men who once conquered boardrooms and battled egos. Now they stood, under streetlights, stripped of pretense. Cole finally broke the silence. I'll handle the expansion pitch on Monday. You take the day. Stay home with them. James blinked. Not surprise, more appreciation. A subtle shift in the dynamic. Cole wasn't trying to outshine him anymore. He was listening. Thanks, James said. Then Cole offered a rare, almost sheepish smile. For what it's worth, she seems way out of your league. James chuckled softly, the first laugh in a while that wasn't strained. I know. They shook hands without ceremony. Just a brief clasp of mutual understanding. And then Cole slid into his car and pulled away, the hum of the engine fading into the misty dark. Back at the truck, Emily stood quietly, leaning against the passenger side. She hadn't heard the conversation, but something about James's posture told her the weight had shifted. You okay? She asked gently. He nodded. Better than I've been in a long time. Emily tilted her head. He come to stir more trouble? James shook his head. No. I think he came to see if I was still the guy he used to. No. And maybe he found someone better. Emily smiled, soft and slow. Sounds like growth. They stood in the quiet for a moment, the truck windows fogged with the breath of sleeping children, the world around them hushed and still. You sure you don't want help getting home? Emily asked, meaning it. He looked at her, the soft lines of her face, the steadiness in her voice, and said, I've got it, but I'd like to see you again. No masks. No tests. She smiled, and for the first time, it wasn't just kind, it was warm, deep, open. I'd like that too. He reached for her hand, not to hold it, but just to let his fingers graze hers for a second. That quiet contact said more than any grand gesture could. No promises, no pressure, just two people meeting each other where they were. She stepped closer, not fully into him, just close enough that their arms brushed, just enough for her presence to anchor him. And in the hush between them, he said, I think I stopped expecting people to surprise me. She looked up at him, eyes steady. Maybe you were looking in the wrong places. He smiled again, not because he had to, but because something inside him had settled, like a weight had lifted. I'll call you tomorrow, he said. I'll answer, she replied. And with one last glance, filled not with longing, but with something more solid, something earned, she turned toward her car. As she pulled away, James stood beneath the rain, watching her taillights disappear into the mist. Behind him, two little girls slept peacefully, safe in the back of a truck their father once used to outrun his past. And now, maybe, it was time to drive toward something new. 1 month later, the boardroom felt different. The long oak table, once a place James had dominated with quiet calculation, now hummed with something steadier, respect, earned not from spreadsheets or profit margins, but from presence, real presence. Across from him, Cole leaned back in his chair, eyes scanning a fresh proposal. He glanced at James, then to the others gathered, a mix of sharp-eyed executives and longtime team members. For once, no one interrupted. No one postured. They listened. Because James Walker wasn't just the man who built Walker Freight anymore. He was the man who had shown up. James spoke, calm and clear. We go local first. Partner with regional farms and small-town delivery systems. No flashy launch. No press storm. We build trust, not headlines. Someone down the table nodded. Another murmured, smart. Cole closed the folder and smiled faintly. Motion passed. There was a quiet murmur of approval. No applause. No theatrics. Just heads turning toward James, and this time, not with caution or calculation. With clarity. They saw him now. Not just the CEO. The man. The father. The leader who had once chosen a sticky diner booth over a luxury retreat and found something they're worth building around. Later that afternoon, James pulled up to the community center where the twins had started a Saturday art class. A small building with peeling paint and laughter leaking from every window. He could have paid for private lessons, but Gracie and Lily had fallen in love with the old lady who ran the class and her endless supply of glitter glue. And honestly, so had he. The truck door creaked as he climbed out. A breeze carried the scent of chalk and wood chips. And there, on the far side of the playground, Emily sat on a bench beneath a big maple tree, her hands tucked into the pockets of a soft denim jacket, eyes on the girls. As they dashed between the swing sets, he didn't call her name. She turned before he reached her, like she felt him coming. James sat beside her without a word. Their shoulders barely brushed, but the contact was enough. Comfortable now. Familiar. She passed him a coffee. 2 sugars, no cream. He smiled. You remember. I pay attention. There was a pause. Not awkward. Just full again, like the kind of silence that feels like home. Gracie tripped and got up laughing. Lily shouted something about clouds shaped like dinosaurs. James chuckled, then turned to Emily. They ask about you now? When they wake up? When they color? When they pray? Emily looked down at her coffee, then back at the girls. I think about them too. More than I expected. He glanced at her. And me? She smiled without looking at him. You're harder to forget than you think. James reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a small, folded piece of paper. They made this today. Said it's for you. Emily unfolded it, a crayon drawing of the 4 of them standing in front of the diner. Big heads, stick limbs, exaggerated hearts above everyone's heads. She traced the outline of Lily's handwriting at the bottom. Miss Emily, we love you. Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't blink them away. I'm not rushing anything, James said softly. I know how much slow can mean, but I want you to know I'm in it. Not just for them. For you. Emily finally looked at him. Not surprised. Not overwhelmed. Just seen. I know, she whispered. And I'm not running. He reached for her hand. This time not a fleeting touch, but a still one. Grounded. Honest. Their fingers interlaced naturally, like something that had been waiting to happen. No ceremony. No grand declaration. Just a man and a woman sitting under a tree on a Saturday afternoon, watching too. Girls who believed in glitter and forgiveness, and who now believed in her. James looked out at the playground. You think they'll be okay? Emily squeezed his hand, her voice steady. They already are. Because you are. Later, the 4 of them walked side by side down the sidewalk toward the truck. Gracie skipped ahead, Lily trailing behind, tugging on Emily's sleeve to show her a rock, shaped like a heart. And James? He didn't lead from in front. He walked beside Emily, shoulder to shoulder, no longer carrying everything alone. Because something had changed. He hadn't just found someone who accepted the man beneath the mask. He had chosen to take off the mask and found that he was still enough. And now, they were building something new. Not a fairy tale. Not a fantasy. Just a life. Grounded, growing, real. Some stories don't end with a kiss. They begin with a hand held in daylight, a heart seen clearly, and the quiet. Understanding that the best things grow slow and last. Who stayed when you had nothing to prove. For James, it wasn't success that mattered. It was being seen, with his kids, and still being enough. Who showed up when you were just yourself. Share your story in the comments below. And if this meant something to you, share it. And subscribe for more. Thank you for being part of the story.